Good evening, everyone. We are just going to give it 1 minute while people are starting to log on. Welcome, welcome to those who are already here. Okay, well, we have quite a big crowd tonight, I think. So while people are logging on, I'm just going to start with my introduction, and so hopefully people won't miss too much. But welcome again. Good evening. My name is Mimi Boblik. I'm a founding partner and full-time volunteer with Parents Against Vaping. And I want to just let you know behind the scenes, I have some Wizard of Oz back there. My colleagues Alyssa and Austin are here with us tonight. And I thank them for all their work as well on this. So I first just want to let you know I'm a parent, like many of you. I have 3 kids now, grown in their 20s. My youngest is 20. And I myself have lived experience with a child who started vaping at 17, which is how I got into this in 2018. And so many of us, both volunteers and people who work with PAVE around the country, have lived experience. Many of us do, and so we can share what we know, but also very importantly, our information while we are parents. The information that is embedded within our presentations is all based on the latest science and research from public health experts. So I think that's really important to know. And just by way of background, it's really important to understand that our goal as Parents Against Vaping is to protect youth from vaping and nicotine use and other substances. We are not focused on what adults do and adults who vape. So just important to know that. While I am introducing this webinar, I just want to ask you all if you could kindly take a quick survey. It's just 2 questions, just so we have a sense for where you are in terms of knowledge. For those of you hearing this information for the first time, I hope you find it informative. And for those who have seen it before, we have updated some things. We actually have some videos to share today. We thought it'd be really impactful to have some important voices in this conversation. So we have a voice from a youth, a parent, and a public health expert. We're now offering this webinar quarterly because we're getting a lot of requests to do this presentation from schools and other entities, and we simply unfortunately can't be in all these places, even virtually. So given the high demand, we thought we'd offer it quarterly, and so that anyone could get on. So please share that with anyone that you think might be interested, either schools or other entities. You can have a watch party or other ways to show it. But just wanted to let you know that. And also tonight, we will be trying to take questions throughout the event. I'll try to take some at the end as well, but don't know how much time we'll have. But there is a Q&A function. As many of you know, you can click on that and ask some questions, and we have people in the background hopefully able to answer as many of them as we can get to. We hope tonight, by the end of this, that you will be able to understand how our kids have been targeted. And this really upset me when I first understood. This is a generation, including my own daughter, who would not have smoked cigarettes, was not smoking cigarettes, and would not have used nicotine products. So I think it's really important also just to give context to understand how we got here. Also, importantly, understanding the dangers of nicotine use and the dangers of e-cigarettes specifically, and other products that are either tobacco products and non-nicotine products that are also being targeted at our kids. So, and then also knowing how to protect our youth, how to talk to them, how to get involved, and then if you're interested, how to take action in your community. So, again, many of us are volunteers, and so we have people across the country doing what I'm doing tonight in communities around the country, and we welcome you to join us. So very quickly, I just want to share, many of you already know the origin story of PAVE. A dual representative came into our founder's son's 9th grade classroom under the guise of an anti-addiction talk. And that's what sort of fueled the fire of frustration and anger with the moms who founded PAVE. And now we have, 5 years later, really become the national voice for parents and families across the country whose lives have been upended by this youth vaping epidemic. So we both educate, which is part of what I'm doing tonight. We educate around the country, primarily adults, and I will talk about a little bit of youth content that we have. We also advocate across the country for changes in laws on the federal, state, and local levels. And primarily, we are trying to get flavored tobacco products off the market, because that's really what's hooking our kids. And we've been working tirelessly around the country, again, many volunteers around the country trying to get laws passed, and we have been successful. It is like whack-a-mole, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but we have been successful, had campaigns to get legislation passed, and we were even part of the original congressional hearing against Juul for the act that I talked about before, entering the classroom. But we are just fortunate to be also part of large coalitions of public health experts around the country, some of whom are on this call today. And so we're very lucky to partner with incredible people. So just a really brief discussion about what's happening today in youth vaping. We still have a crisis on our hands. These numbers have come down from earlier years, pre-COVID, where over 5.3 million teens were reporting vaping, and these are middle and high school teens. So we are down to 2.1 according to the National Youth Tobacco Survey. These are still crisis levels, and we also find, unfortunately, that there are more people using more often, which just to us indicates a higher level of addiction. So that is really critical to know. Also, majority of kids use flavored products, which is exactly why we're trying to get them off the market. Very few kids, I think, would have started if it were just flavorless tobacco products, that were introduced. But there are 15,000 plus, incredibly kid-friendly flavors on the market, and that is what we're fighting to get off the market. Also, unfortunately, more than 10% of young adults are vaping. And what likely happened is they started middle and high school, and now they're on to college and using these products through college and even beyond. Once they're hooked, it is really, really hard to quit. The disposable devices, which I'll share some pictures later, are very popular among youth. They're just super easy to use and very discreet. And again, we just have higher levels of addiction happening in our country right now. This to me is one of the most frustrating statistics, because again, our generation of kids was not smoking. We brought, not we, but parents across the country, public health advocates, through efforts through the last number of decades, we were able to bring smoking rates down from 27% in the 90s down to below 6% in 2019. But if you see what happened in the blink of an eye, e-cigarette rates were back to 27%, back to the smoking rates of the 90s by 2019, due to really heavy marketing from the industry. And I'll share a little bit about how that happened. I want to share my first video with you. Is a tremendous addiction psychiatrist. He runs the Cornell Addiction Psychiatry Center here in New York and has worked with kids who have vaping addictions. And he has done webinars with us. If you're interested, you can go on our, if you want to learn more and hear more from him, we have a series called Ask the Expert, which does sit on our website, and we will be doing more of them. Jonathan Avery is tremendous. I just want to share a little bit to give you a little bit of context about what's happened COVID and beyond here in our in this country and the environment.
Even before COVID, we were seeing the youth struggling. I mean, the data on persistent sadness and hopelessness and self-harm, they were up even before COVID. And then you add COVID and stress related to race and the wars and the screens and everything else. It's not surprising that we saw, and we do see in our clinical practice, more and more adolescents using substances. I think one thing that I'll add to that great introduction is that this stress is on our kids, but it's also really on our parents. And, there was a real notable study that came out about 2 months ago about how adults between age 35 to 50 drinking more, binging more, using more marijuana, more hallucinogens than ever before. And so this stress is, of course, stressing our kids, but partly because it's stressing their parents. 35 to 50, these are the age of the parents of the adolescents. And so they're using more substances. They're stressed by all the same stressors that are impacting the kids. And so where do kids turn? You can't turn to mom and dad sometimes. We saw in COVID an increase of violence at home, increased violence in communities. You don't feel safe at school. You end up at home on your screen and turning to something that can provide some relief. And we're certainly highlighting nicotine in this space, but also marijuana and other substances. And when you feel like there aren't outlets, when you feel trapped, when you feel sad and alone and anxious, it's not surprising that you use these devices to get relief. And then the terrible thing that happens is that they 100% help at first. That's why everyone does drugs. They help at first. Weeks and months in, they're making everything worse. And now you have an additional problem to untangle. You're stuck in an addiction that often pushes you more into the secrets and isolates you more and more from your community and from help.
So I just love the way he frames that. I feel like that really sets us up for understanding the environment that we're dealing with in our country. I think many of us can relate to that. And we'll be talking a little bit about the mental health crisis as well. Just a very quick background about how we got here. Some of you have already seen these. The campaign that targeted our youth in 2018 was really egregious, really 2017, 2018. I just think this is really important to see because this shows how our kids were targeted. These look like, this could be my daughter with the high ponytail and the midriff shirts. These ads were really targeted at our kids. And, the industry said that they were trying to help get adults off of smoking cigarettes. But obviously these ads tell a very different story. These ads are targeted our kids. Juul really led the way in 2017, but you see there are other ones who have followed with all the same kind of marketing. And, we have some of the sort of old Marlboro Man, it's the same playbook, just a slightly different look, right? And these companies know a fact that I learned, which I found really compelling, which is that 90% of those who struggle with addiction started before the age of 18. So they know they have to get these kids hooked early so that they can create their next lifetime customer. And that's exactly what they've done. And, I don't know where, some of you are in urban, rural, and suburban communities all over the country. I think no matter where you are seeing store displays and marketing. These are very alluring to youth. I mean, some of these products are right next to, the gums and candies. They're put at eye level for our kids. They have signage, that's very alluring to kids. And they're often sold where our kids shop, right? At gas stations, convenience stores, 7-Elevens. They are going after youth. And they also are very smart to market in higher density areas near schools. And unfortunately, they target lower income neighborhoods as well and people of color. So we're really aware of these predatory practices, not only to youth specifically youth, but also more broadly, a variety of populations that they consider priority populations. Tobacco and vaping companies have a long history of strategic and aggressive marketing to specific populations. They're handing out free products at parties, and they have coupons, and they're making health claims that they can't support. They are doing events under, like, gay pride parades under the guise of social responsibility activities. So all these things are really meant to draw us in and feel good about the industry. And nowhere is this more egregious than in the targeting of Black Americans with menthol cigarettes. This has been going on for decades. The tobacco industry decades ago went after the Black communities through menthol. Menthol has a property of sort of a numbing property. So it allows for a deeper inhale, a faster addiction. And they targeted Black communities in a couple of decades ago. And unfortunately now we have over 80% of Black smokers using menthol, and even more for our youth. So we are working hard to try to get menthol off the market. Unfortunately, there have been more delays. The FDA, banned flavored cigarettes in 2009, but left menthol on the market, and we're working hard to get it off. And there's a great documentary called Black Lives, Black Lungs, if you want to check it out. Super short, but really impactful. That kind of explains the history. And just quickly, you may have read about, weren't there bans, and what's the FDA doing? So there have been some bans on certain products, but the reality is that the FDA has been slow to regulate the most popular products that are out there. So there are still tens of thousands of flavored products out there for our kids to use. Many of them disposable, and basically the market became flooded years ago when there was not so many years ago, but a couple of years ago, when the FDA was starting to regulate certain products. Other products were created called synthetic ones that flew under the regulatory radar. Now the FDA is regulating them, and there's new products. So there's something called meditine, which is it's not regulated. Spree Bar came out with it. It's a type of nicotine, which is again not regulated. So we're just playing a game of whack-a-mole, unfortunately. We really need the FDA to act. We are trying to push them to act to get all these flavored products off the market. And unfortunately, while China has banned these flavored products to protect their own children, 90% of our products that we receive on our ports come from China. And we are trying to work to put pressure on the regulatory bodies that regulate what's coming into our ports. Unfortunately, this has been a real issue because these products many of them are not regulated. Many of them are not approved. Most of them are not approved for hitting our ports, but they are, and they're under sneaky names, and they use different names for the products so that they fly under the radar. So it's really important to see what these products look like. In person, sometimes we would hand these products out, but you can see some of these may look familiar to you, some kids that you might see, but disposables are really very popular among youth. When the other products were taken off the market, there was 1,000% increase in disposables a number of years ago. These are really popular, first because they're cheap, but also because they're really easy to hide from your parents. Because once you use them, you throw them away. But they contain a lot of nicotine. It used to be that some contained 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes worth of nicotine, but now there are products that have up to 5,000 puffs, which is an incredible amount of nicotine, maybe as much as a full carton of cigarettes worth of nicotine. So the problem is too, there's no regulation. You don't know how much you've used. You can't see, like in a pack of cigarettes, you can see I've used 3 or 5. But with these products, you cannot know until the device is empty that you've used the whole thing. And by then, they've used a lot of nicotine. But again, they're super easy to hide. They can keep them in their backpacks. They don't look like really anything. They look like highlighters and pens. So these are really important to see, some of these popular products. And, already in a few months, they keep changing. So there's new products out on the market that, just to be aware for parents that they're constantly changing. And there are other products that are not disposable. These are refillable devices and pod-based devices. The pod-based are like Juul, where they have a pod that's pre-filled, and you just click it onto a device that you recharge time and again. The refillables are popular because there are, again, over 15,000 flavors of loose e-liquid. You can put these loose e-juice into the device, and kids really enjoy that. And also, they sometimes use these interchangeably with THC liquid, which is basically pot, weed, marijuana. So that's important to know. And we want to just make people aware, if they're not, of other things that are super popular among our kids that are not vaping devices or smoking devices, but they also contain a lot of nicotine. And these are nicotine pouches and gums and lozenges. But really, the pouches are very popular. They're little pouches full of nicotine. They put them in between, in their mouth, between their cheek and their teeth, and they absorb into the bloodstream, and they have a lot of nicotine. We've heard from kids that they often will use them if they're trying to get through a school day and they don't want to get caught at school vaping. They might use these to keep the nicotine high so that they don't crave nicotine during the school day. But these are really important to keep an eye out for, and very popular. Another product which we really want to sound the alarm on, and one of our founders did this week in Washington, is these non-nicotine vapes. And non-nicotine vapes are vapes that contain pretty much all the same chemicals as nicotine vapes, but without the nicotine. Unfortunately, these products are not safe for our kids either. Again, they contain a lot of chemicals, and in fact, some are labeled as non-nicotine, but actually they have snuck nicotine in them. But regardless, let's just say they don't have nicotine. Unfortunately, these products have the same chemicals found in the nicotine vapes. These are toxic, many of them are toxic chemicals. They contain the same two products that are needed to convert the e-liquid into aerosol, which is what our kids are using. It is really, they're inhaling aerosol into their lungs. But unfortunately, these are very accessible products. You can get them online. You can get them at stores. Kids can buy them because they're not regulated. They have no age verification because they have no nicotine. So we think of these as sort of like a starter kit for our kids, because it's not a real leap for kids to go from vaping these to vaping a nicotine vape. And if you look at the marketing, it's just super alluring to our kids. I mean, these are clearly very alluring and sexy ads that, are obviously making an impression on our kids. And as our pulmonologist experts say, nothing should go into our kids' lungs except air while they are developing. So even if you just took everything out and are just vaping the actual device without any chemicals, there are still metal particulates that can get lodged into the lungs by vaping time and again the same device. So these products are causing inflammation, they're causing irritation of the lungs, and they really should be regulated. So, and these are just more products like this. Unfortunately, it's sort of these starter kits. Puff Bar was taken off the market with the nicotine vapes, so they created the zero nicotine, but they're really just making their way into THC vapes. So this is just the next frontier for many of these companies. And while we are mostly talking about nicotine in our company, in our organization, we have had to start to really understand the cannabis or weed industry. We like to call it weed because really that's what it is. Cannabis sounds so clinical and scientific because that's what the industry is trying to spin it as. But really, these products are harmful. And while most commonly kids are still vaping nicotine and not cannabis, they are starting more and more to use cannabis to use pot, weed, THC in vaping devices. I think because they're perceived as lower risk substance, and vaping as a mode of like a safer mode of consumption is what the misconception is among kids. But it is concerning. Now we're hearing about co-use of nicotine and cannabis as kids are using them together. They use one as a quote chaser to the other because it sort of enhances the reward effect by using both together. And we are hearing more and more. There was a really powerful New York Wall Street Journal article a few weeks ago, or maybe this weekend, talking about the effects of cannabis on the brain and on youth, especially, and the links to psychosis and schizophrenia and other things. So, we don't want to belittle the importance of cannabis use, and we want to make sure our kids understand all the risks of using these products, because really they're becoming legalized more for political purposes, more than that they are somehow magically safe now. So this dual use behavior among our youth has become more and more disturbing. So we just want to sound the alarm. Also, there's the Ivali situation, which I won't go into too much, but that's a lung injury that's caused by the e-liquid that's used in usually in THC, but also we're seeing it among people who are just vaping nicotine. So people ask us, which is better for anyone. The bottom line is that none of this is healthy for our kids, for youth. Again, we're not talking about adults, but for youth, these products are not healthy. They are harmful for our youth. So the thing is, the differences in cigarettes and vapes, there are a few differences. One is that the nicotine in vapes is a patented technology called nicotine salts, and they hit the bloodstream and brain very quickly, and they give this nice alluring head rush to kids, whereas nicotine from cigarettes is burning tobacco leaves. Also, as I mentioned, with the vaping, you can do it anywhere. We hear our kids, hiding it under their pillows at night because they're so addicted they can't get through the night without a hit, or keeping it in their pocket, and they get very nervous when they don't have it in their pockets. They get very anxious. Cigarettes, you have to go outside and smoke. It has a real smell to it. You can smell it on hair and clothes. There is a smell to e-cigarettes, which I missed on my daughter, but it is not a kind of gross smell. It's actually kind of a sweet smell. So it's easy to miss, and it's just very discreet for our kids. Also, as I mentioned, these products contain a lot of nicotine, sometimes over 1 to 2 packs worth, and now we're hearing as much as 20 packs worth of cigarettes. So depending on the product, the manufacturer, et cetera, they have different levels of nicotine. But these vapes are designed for a faster addiction and easier initiation, because the nicotine salts are also easier to inhale, a less harsh initiation into nicotine. So, and again, you don't know when it's gone until you've finished it all. So really not great. When I asked my daughter years ago, I said, do you know what's in these? And she said, Mom, it's just flavored water. And she really believed it at the time. And unfortunately, there's 0% water in vapes. It is primarily full of chemicals and metals. The red ones are known harmful substances. Some are known toxins, some are known carcinogens. So, and not all these chemicals are found in all vapes, but they are found in different vapes. And, it's just important to know that these are not harmless products for our kids. And so also just to know that, again, we're vaping aerosol. This is not, I think if the companies called it aerosolizing instead of vaping, which sounds so much cooler, I don't know that kids would have started. So want to go into a little bit about health harms. And because for me as a parent, this is the most important. I don't know that I would care if this were just a toy, but it's not, unfortunately. It really does have harmful effects on the developing brain and lungs and body. So let's just start with the brain. As you probably have heard, we keep hearing it goes older and older, but youth brains they keep developing till around age 25. So unfortunately, developing brains are just more susceptible to addictive substances, nicotine being one of them. And as I mentioned, 90% of those who struggle with addiction started using substances before 18. So, because, that's our brains are just wired for addiction at that age. Nicotine is a very addictive substance. And so it's really easy to become addicted, and unfortunately hard to quit, especially with vaping. And we've heard, stories of kids just really having a tough time. What happens in our brain that I learned is that basically nicotine is releases dopamine, and dopamine is a pleasure transmitter in our brain that we emit without drugs. So if something good happens to us, if I score in soccer or in Fortnite, or I'm unfortunately if I'm seeing something cute on TikTok, and that it gives me a dopamine rush. Nicotine does the same thing, but at some point, unfortunately, when you start to vape more and more, your brain becomes sort of dependent on the nicotine to release dopamine, and then you need more and more of it just to feel that normal baseline, or to avoid the feeling of withdrawal. So that's just really important to know. It also, it can exacerbate underlying mood disorders. So it can make anxiety and depression worse. While kids, as Dr. Avery mentioned in the video, at first it feels good. It feels like if I'm anxious or depressed, it actually can make me feel better in the short term. But once the addiction takes over, it actually can exacerbate those underlying feelings. So that's really important for kids to know, that, to seek help instead of, using substances. And it can also cause permanent damage to the brain in terms of worsening memory and processing speed, and increased impulse or decreased impulse control. So, unfortunately, the damage can be permanent, and so we just want to make kids aware and parents aware of some of the dangers. Also, again, the lungs continue to develop. We've heard even well past our 20s, and even into our 30s. So unfortunately, kids who vape today, it may take a few decades to see the full effects of what happened to their lungs. Maybe when they're in their 40s, they might feel it. But in the short term, we also know that vaping can cause irritation and inflammation of the lungs, sometimes worse. Again, some of these products, because they contain metals, when they're heated time and again, those metals start to break down and get inhaled into the lungs, and can cause irritation. And again, sometimes worse. We've heard of some really serious issues with teens, although, we try not to use scare tactics, but, we've had kids with double lung transplants and other, hospitalizations and collapsed lungs and things like that. So, we want to keep our teens' lungs healthy for as long as we can. We've heard from athletes that they can't perform as well as they used to after they start vaping. So again, it's going to be a long time before we understand and scientists understand the full effects of vaping, but we know for sure today that that it is not safe for our kids. Also, for our hearts, for kids' hearts, it's nicotine is a stimulant, so it can elevate the heart rate, and it triggers that flight or fight response, which is like, this jittery feeling that people have when they're in a dangerous or exciting situation. My daughter did complain of heart palpitations, that her heart had an irregular heartbeat. That is also something we're hearing more and more, that doctors are hearing more about. It can increase it can increase blood pressure and adrenaline, and increase your heart rate. None of this is good. We've also heard more, scientists are learning more and more about what's happening to the heart when it comes to using these chemicals. So we're continuing to learn more about these products, but what we know today is not good. And there's preliminary evidence from animal studies that the flavoring in chemicals, without the nicotine even, but the flavoring itself can be toxic to heart cells. So no good news there. And then there's other risks. We're hearing more studies about the oral cells, the DNA that's been damaged in the mouth. And I have heard that as well from smoking. And we've had many reports of seizures. I think with COVID, the reporting kind of stopped or slowed because there was just so much going on. But we heard quite a few reports of seizures. We continue to hear that. We also hear there's something called nixic, which is, kids lose their appetite and they start to lose weight, and they have other stomach issues. So that's something to be aware of. And unfortunately, these products can weaken the immune system. It just makes it easier to get things and harder to get rid of them. And these are they're social products, right? So our kids are using them at parties, they're passing them around and sharing germs, and getting each other sick as well. So I just want to go through, quickly some of the reasons that teens are vaping, and I've mentioned some of them. One is the flavors, right? As I mentioned, pretty much all kids who start using these products start with flavors, and the targeted marketing, like this very alluring ad, with these young kids smoking, it makes it look super cool. That's one of the other reasons. Also, it's affordable and accessible. People are not supposed to ship these online anymore. It is illegal to ship these products. But in fact, we just had a meeting today. One of our team members shipped a product from Canada. It had a funny name on the outside. It did not say anything about vaping. She could do it without any age verification and ship it through the mail. It's not supposed to happen. So it's just really important that we look out for that for our kids too. What they're getting in the mail. And they're pretty affordable, super discreet, as I mentioned, easy to hide, and easy to use when people, like right in front of people's faces, including teachers, right? It's become normalized to vape and use these products, even though we know statistically a lot of kids are not using them. It feels to some of our youth that everybody's doing it, right? They see it in the bathrooms, they see it at parties. So there's a normalizing of these products, and also very importantly, we hear from our medical experts that there's generally a connection between substance use and mental health. And so, COVID has exacerbated this, but again, even before that and after it, we are having a mental health crisis in this country among our youth, and it's heartbreaking. And so very often youth are self-medicating, right, for underlying disorders. Also, they just get this incredible nicotine kick. As I mentioned, these products contain a lot of nicotine, and they make it really alluring. That is the dopamine rush, and it's very alluring. Very addictive product. And also when they hear on TV or other ads for adults that it might be safer than cigarettes, they hear safe. They think it's, risk-free, when it's in fact certainly not for our kids. So I want to share a youth voice with you. People who attended our conference, I believe, might have heard it. But this is just another quote from a youth who was vaping. And just, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety in my life. Vaping was a way to take the stress away. But, in essence, this was a youth who became addicted, and it was very hard to quit. So I just want to share another recording with you here.
I tried to quit was when I was 18, and I've had like good periods of being vape free. I know there was one point where I had gone vape free for like 8 months, and I was doing really good. And then I was hanging out with some friends, and they were vaping, and I smelled it, and it's like an instant, like 360, like maybe I could just do it casually, I mean, there's been some things that have been helpful. Sour candy, or just something that really activates your taste buds. Also staying busy, not being at home, where I can convince myself that it's a good idea to go and get one. Financially, where I really wanted to, stop spending $30 a week on a disposable. In some ways that I just feel like hopeless. Like I really wish I wouldn't have started this when I was younger, because it feels like a endless loop.
So, it's just heart-wrenching to hear. We hear so many stories of youth who are struggling, and some are able to quit and some have not. But, just to understand that we all need to have compassion. It is so hard. It's easy to get addicted and hard to quit. So just sharing that. And some of you might have seen these. They're really cool YouTube videos. Some people set up these in classrooms, hidden in plain sight. It just shows, if you look carefully, try and identify where the vapes are. And basically, they look like highlighters and pens and, USB drives. They look like things that are not. So I think it's just really important for all of us to be aware and be vigilant about what's in our kids' backpacks and in their drawers, and and just ask the questions, of our kids and keep an open dialogue. So some of the signs of vaping I want to share with you, there may be more, but these are some of the big ones. And I missed some of these, and I wish I had had this list when my daughter started vaping, because I think I might have been more aware. But the tricky part is with these is that some of these are actually just signs of teenage behavior, typical teenage behavior. So it's sometimes hard to tell what's just teenage behavior and what's a sign of an addiction or something's going on in their lives. So one is just a secretive attitude. Again, hard to know. Our kids tend to close the door on our face, and sometimes it's hard to know. So, but I think it is important, if you're on vacation with them or out to dinner or sitting at a meal, that if they are trying to leave where you are frequently, it could be that they need to go take a hit of their nicotine product, their vape. This could be a sign of addiction. Also, this sweet smell, which is what I missed on my daughter. She had long hair. I did smell at night when she would come home, this sort of sweet smell on her. I just thought it was perfume or something, but that is the smell of vape. A vape, again, is an aerosol. So think of an aerosol product like hairspray. It sticks to things. It sticks to hair and clothes. So if you smell that, it could be a sign. Also, if they're leaving their window open or they're using candles or room fresheners to disguise the smell, that might be a sign. It causes dry mouth and dry nose. So if they're drinking a lot, or you just notice that a change in their, behaviors, maybe a bloody nose, that kind of thing could be a sign. Also, again, looking out for these products, colorful caps or things that look like highlighters, pens that maybe aren't. And changes in their sleeping pattern, because nicotine is a stimulant. So it could make them, have trouble falling asleep at night. And maybe they're tired in the mornings, again, just changes in their behavior. Also, I missed a cough. So raspy, dry cough. At the very early stages, it could be just irritation of the lungs, which is probably what my daughter had, irritation from, vaping. But if you start to notice more serious coughing or chest pains or shortness of breath, it would be time to see a doctor, because it could be signs of a more serious infection, and they might need help. Also, anxiety and irritability, mood swings. I've heard of kids, punching a wall or a door, a hole through a door, because they were angry. Their parents took their vape away, and it made them very angry. But if they are having withdrawal symptoms, it could make them, irritable, and just in general mood swings because of the withdrawal symptoms. Also, as I mentioned, this nixtic, changes in eating habits or loss of weight. If you are finding that they don't feel well, if they're nauseous, just some signs. And finally, our kids have access to Zelle and Venmo and these spending apps now on their phones. And many kids are getting these products through Instagram, through kids at school or kids in their communities. So it would just be helpful to really be vigilant about how they're spending their money, and what they're spending it on, and if they're getting deliveries at home. I mean, Uber Eats delivers these products, which is insane, but it's true. So just to be aware. Also, I want to share another video with you from a parent voice. This is a different quote. I saw it changed who he was. The vape wall went up, and I couldn't tear it down. These are people who are really feeling helpless about the parents who feel their kids are just changing in front of them, and they feel helpless. I'm just going to share another video with you here.
It was definitely lonely for me too initially, when tried to look for resources, although I live in Columbus, Ohio. No cessation therapy was recognized for any minors, and the schools, like everybody else said, either they were suspending them or punishing them. And yes, when my kids started, I think when I found out it was 2018, and in a couple of years they were all isolated due to COVID. Fast forward next year, it's like this person in my house I don't even recognize. Nicotine made them sneaky, they were impulsive, they were angry, and then they were isolated and depressed, and anxiety was there. therapy, they wouldn't accept any CBT therapy, they wouldn't take any medication. And then I think like everybody else, they said they started to self-medicate with marijuana, which eventually affected their cognitive behavior and then made them so laid back. And it's like, I don't recognize this kid who was a good student, an athlete, a soccer player. And now who's this kid in my house? I don't even know this man, like, growing in front of our eyes and away from us.
So unfortunately, again, we hear so many of these stories, and it just breaks our heart to see so many parents struggling, but also, fighting the good fight and trying to support their kids. Which leads me to my next section, which is how to talk to kids about vaping. Again, every family is different, every parenting style is different, we all have our own ways, so we all have to find ways to talk about it that work for our families. I'm just going to share with you some things that our public health experts, addiction psychiatrists, and so forth have shared with us. Basically, of course, first coming from a place of understanding and support. It's so easy to come down hard on our kids because we're scared. And but really understanding what I've shared today, which is how this industry has targeted our kids. And so if you found vaping products in your home or on your child, it's really easy to get angry and frustrated and even feel embarrassed because we think that we're the only family dealing with this, but really we need to just come from a place of empathy and understanding. As Dr. Avery has said, which I love the way he says it, but that addiction hides in the shadows because of the shame that comes from doing something that you can't control and deep down know it isn't healthy for you and want to stop. Most kids want to stop when they're addicted. So it's just really important to understand that we have to come from a place of compassion. And also trying to listen and be an advocate. There are, as this parent video, she mentioned, a lot of kids are getting suspended and expelled for using these products, but really they need help. They don't need suspension. So we need to help be advocates for our kids at school and in our communities, and modeling good behavior. Unfortunately, and again, no shame, no blame. Our generation was targeted too, and our parents' generation. So if you smoke or vape, it's just important to understand that, that kids whose parents smoke or vape are more likely to do it as well. So maybe to avoid doing it in front of the kids, or, talk about your own habits and struggles. If they ask you, you can share. So, and then just, finding times for conversations. So, I live in New York City, so I'm on the street a lot with my kids walking around. And when they were little and I saw cigarettes, I would talk about it. And my kids never would have smoked. And that's the tragedy, again, how normalized vaping has become. And it seems so innocuous. So, it's just important to know that there is help out there, and just to go easy on ourselves, right? Because our kids were targeted. Don't beat yourself up. If you have a child who has a nicotine or a substance use issue, we can get help, right? And just not to punish ourselves as well. We have some quitting sort of, resources. We have quite a few that are on our website as well. But it's, first I would talk to your pediatrician. As also that parent mentioned, unfortunately, there are no FDA approved cessation methods, prescription methods for youth. However, many pediatricians and doctors will help you with your teen and prescribe some things off script. And even the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying that that's okay. So it is happening. So talk to your doctors. If you need support, there is support that can help with cravings. The nicotine replacement therapies, the patches, the gums, things like that, can be prescribed to youth. So it's just important to seek the right kind of help. Also, there is talk therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy, which can help some kids. And again, that is not necessarily free. It often can cost, if you don't have insurance to pay for it, it can be expensive. So it may not be an option for everyone, but sometimes even the schools can help provide some counseling. And really just understand that relapsing is normal. It can take kids several times to quit, and it can take years. In fact, it took my daughter quite a while, and I'm sure she still has cravings and all of that. The Truth Initiative has an app called This Is Quitting, which is a texting app for youth and for parents. There is one for each of us. So that is something that can help support teens as they're trying to quit. It gives them some support and daily reminders and sort of like, supportive texts. And if they need extra help, they can click here for some advice on how to distract yourself or whatever it is. It really can be very helpful. It's evidence-based. Hundreds of thousands of people have been using it, so we know that it works. And also there's other, in your own community, sometimes there are apps as well, and also talk lines that youth can rely on. And then I just want to spend a moment talking about school policy, because as I mentioned, so many schools are suspending and expelling our kids for vaping on premise, but really they should be helping them. And so we are trying to educate schools through parents and through the school administrators about the importance of using more supportive discipline, we call it, which is an alternative to suspension. And so we're actually launching a new webinar that's directed at school administrators to talk about this, because it really is important to help youth quit instead of taking them out of school where they are, feel the most supported and have the greatest community, to pull them out of school, take them home where there might not even be a parent there. So we're really trying to give people other options to suspension and expulsion. And in fact, those don't even show that they reduce tobacco use in students, and unfortunately disproportionately impact Black, people of color. So the Black, Indigenous, and people of color students are disproportionately impacted by those policies. So we are really trying to take a more holistic approach. We're trying to convince schools that to understand the addictive nature of these products, and to be a conduit to engage in healthy practices instead of shutting them out of their communities. And then we do have resources for schools, which we won't go into here, but they are on our website, and we are happy to share with schools as well.
I think for Healthier Generation in general, where we sit, and this makes us unique in the kind of public health nonprofit space, is.
Sorry, I just want to tee this up. So this is a fantastic woman who works in an organization called Alliance for Healthier Generation. She has worked to create these policies that I'm talking about, and she just explains, why these are important and why they do what they're doing.
We try to sit really squarely in that intersection between health and learning. And so what is it to promote good health so that, right, kids are there, present at school, able to learn, able to thrive, and get what they need to then move on and be whether it's college and career ready, right, successful adults, whatever that looks like to them, right, contributing members to their communities in ways that feel really meaningful and impactful. And so this, to me, our tobacco policy, to me, is the kind of manifestation of that intersection, right? Like, we want kids to be healthy, we want kids to engage in health promoting behaviors, and they can't learn if they're not in school. And so if the intersection of I'm engaging in a behavior that is not health promoting, right, and then the response is we're going to send you away, then we've totally missed that mark.
I just think that really is an amazing way to frame, the support and the effort that we're trying to give on these restorative practices. And then I just want to quickly talk about two programs we have. One is called Parents Opposing Illegal Sales of Nicotine, which is basically going into communities and helping empower parents to report illegal activity. So either stores that are selling illegally or illegal stores. There are many stores that are not even licensed to be operating, or selling to our youth. So we can talk more about that if you're interested. We did it in New York, and we had reported over 200 stores, and I think over 60+% were not in compliance in some way. So it was a really huge success and really highlighted some of the issues going on in our own communities. And we also have an educator toolkit, and we do training so that we can train community educators or parents. We want people to be trained on our content. We can do it in English and in Spanish, and this gives people the opportunity to do education in their own communities. So if you're interested, please reach out if you want to get trained. And then finally, we have a great program called Vapes or Trash, which is the one thing that we do directed at youth. Basically, we are trying to turn youth into advocates instead of users. And by highlighting the incredible, awful results of vapes to the environment, they are basically not disposable, even though they're called disposable products. So we created this for teens. It is really a powerful campaign, and they can do activities in their classes. We've done them in communities across the country, like cleanup activities or tabling activities. But it really is to highlight vaping's devastating environmental impact on humans and animals and nature. And it is really powerful for kids, because some kids don't care about the health harms, but they really care about the environment. So this is really a way to attract kids. So before we end, we have the same questions. We just want to ask you to fill out a quick survey while I'm just finishing up. Again, it's just 2 quick questions. But as you know, we are, as many of you know, we are a nonprofit, and we work tirelessly for free across the country doing what we do. We would love your support. So if there's anything you can do to support us, to donate, please go online. I will also share with you this QR code. We would love your feedback on this presentation. If you want to go on this QR code and give us some feedback. And also, if you want to get involved in your community, please join us. And we would love you to educate and advocate in your own communities, and we can show you how to do that. The advocacy includes letters to the editors and how to speak to your officials, your local officials. And we also have a really incredible private support group on Facebook. We have over 600 members right now, I believe. And it is just an organic Facebook support group with parents and others who are struggling to, struggling with their kids' addiction and really want support. And it's a beautiful community of people who are giving each other support. So if you're interested in joining that, please sign up. We just ask you to, make sure that, you are a parent or a public health person. And so I think that is it. Let me just make sure. That is the end. And that's how to reach us. And you can always reach us at info@ or education@ as well. I will just put the QR code up again. I'm just going to see if there's anything in the chat. I know some questions have been answered throughout this. But there are no open questions. So we finished 3 minutes early. I do want to thank you all for joining tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But otherwise, I appreciate you being here, and please continue to follow us and support. Thank you so much.